Well, from what I can tell so far, having watched Romney's campaign and the things that he said, even though he says it in quite a nice way, he will run on the essential McCarthyite view that Obama is an alien, corrupting and destroying America and appeasing the enemies of the good throughout the world and disowning the good. It's going to be, in other words, a brutal, vicious McCarthyite attack upon Obama from Romney. And a view, or somehow, that, that this recovery could have been jump-started immediately if only we'd had a Republican in charge. And the notion that you see in this book, of Romney's belief that Obama apologized for America in his tour. Again, this theme. Of course, Obama did not apologize ever for America. He apologized for the torture that was practiced by a previous regime, the Bush-Cheney administration, which is, of course, profoundly and remains profoundly un-American and un-Western and evil. And Romney, of course, supports it. So I think what we'll get is that, and then we're going to get Romney trying to do "Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago?" which is, a classic thing. In fact, many on the right really are reliving 1979. They want this to be their moment. Although Romney is just not Reagan. I'm sorry to let people know. I also think it'll just be kind of a tired argument. Romney wants to make this between some abstraction called the Entitlement Society and an abstraction called the Opportunity Society, without actually detailing really how Obama is that different from what Romney has been or done or proposes to do, for that matter. I have a feeling that foreign policy is going to emerge again as an issue because it's quite clear that with one of the candidates for president, unless it's Ron Paul, which is obviously unlikely at this point, will explicitly be favoring a new war with Iran in the Middle East. And Obama will be explicitly attempting to avoid it, if he can, at all costs. That is a huge issue. This election is about whether we are going to go to war again in the Middle East. And that will come through. The other question I think will come through will be, what do you want to do from now on? How are you going to jumpstart this economy? How do you hope to rev it up? And essentially what Romney is arguing is that a little more dose of what we had in the 80s, or indeed in the early part of the 2000s with Bush, is what is needed, without quite explaining how, once you've cut tax rates to the 30s as opposed to the 80s, you can have that effect one more time. I mean, you just can't. There are only so much levels you can reduce taxes by. And also fails to explain or have an argument why those policies didn't do very well in the first decade of the 21st century. And he also has to argue that everybody should sacrifice: poor seniors, students, people on Medicare, 40 million uninsured, 2.5 million young adults on their parents' health insurance. How all that should be done while nothing, in fact, tax should be cut on the super rich. That just strikes me as a basically ludicrous and unfair proposition. And I don't see it as a winning argument. I just don't. Unless he is really prepared to shift and to embrace some shared sacrifice. And in fact, the sacrifice should be shared by those who have done particularly well in the last 30 years, rather than borne entirely by those who have really borne the brunt of the globalized and dislocating economy of the last 20 years.